do that. I don't want worship to end, and now I have to follow you. All right. Well, like I said, it's Father's Day, and I will say this. I'm pleasantly surprised. This is my third Father's Day here now, and we have a happy habit of bucking tradition at this church when it comes to Father's Day. As I said in our Sunday school this morning, Father's Day is typically the least attended Sunday on the calendar. And it's usually competing with Memorial Day and Labor Day for the least attended days. And yet, every Father's Day, you guys show up in force. I think that is a testament. Huh?
That's because they're good fathers.
Exactly. It's a testament to how you guys are. I want to read today, starting actually in Deuteronomy chapter 6, because it is Father's Day. And there's a commandment we find there, and in my Bible it's labeled the greatest commandment. And this passage in Deuteronomy really is to remind us what our role is as parents. And I'm going to be speaking a lot to the fathers today. We get this one day a year where I do that. But mothers, you are very, very important too. But we lavished a bunch of love on you like a month ago, and so now it's our turn. Just fair warning on that. But know that most of what I will say to the fathers does apply to both parents. So mothers, you are heard as well. Deuteronomy 6, starting in verse 1, says this: "Now this is the commandment, the statutes and the rules that the Lord your God commanded me to teach you, that you may go do them in the land to which you are going over to possess it, that you may fear the Lord your God, you and your son and your son's son, by keeping all his statutes and his commandments, which I command you all the days of your life, that your days may be long. Hear therefore, O Israel, and be careful to do them, that it may go well for you, and that you may multiply greatly, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates." The idea here for us parents is that the words of the Lord should be the greatest heritage that we give our children. Not money and wealth, not privilege, not power. The greatest inheritance you can give to your child, above all things in this world, is to teach them to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, all your mind. That is the cry of our world, isn't it? When we look today at our churches, it is often remarked that our churches have grown weaker and weaker as the generations have passed on. It is a sad state of affairs. But the reality is that that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that our families, you get a parent that is faithful and brings their kids, and yet the transfer doesn't seem to happen. That baton handoff of your faith becoming your children's faith seems to be lost on us. And I wonder why that is. I ponder why that is. I pray over why that is. As a parent myself. As one, I look down at my children and I think, how can I raise you up in a way that you will love the Lord as well? And I'll tell you something. Just getting them to church is not the answer. That does not teach them to love God. That teaches them to go to church. And if they never advance beyond that, if Sunday becomes nothing more than just that ritualistic part of the week where we go to church, then you have failed. And I know that can sound harsh, but it's a reality that we have to face. We are called not just to rote attendance. We are not called just to teach religion and good morals and good values. We are called to teach our families to love God with everything that they are and everything that they have. That is something we must strive for, something we must continue to seek at all costs. Now, if you turn with me to Matthew 11, we are going to continue this week, and I find it interesting that we land on this passage in particular on Father's Day, because it's very easy, well, as a father, to see how this can apply to fathers. Okay, we're going to be looking at verses 28 through 30 today. Let's read that together. It says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Now, I'll tell you, there is no world in which we can attempt to mine the depths of these 3 verses in just the time that we have allotted today. As I said last week, I have literal books on my shelf, entire books that are written and dedicated to just a couple of words within these verses. And so, forgive me, but I'm not going to do an 8-week series just on these couple of verses. We will continue on. We will move on. When we looked last week, what we left off with last week in verses 25 to 27, we saw the state of mind that we are to have when we come to Christ. He talked about knowledge and this idea of the wise have these things hidden from them. Those who find themselves wise in the ways of the world, they don't find Jesus in Jesus' day. What they find instead is a route to kill Jesus. I've said it before, but those who thought they knew the most about Christ's first coming on this earth are those who crucified him. They were puffed up in their knowledge. They had built themselves up into something that they were not. They were prideful, and they led in a prideful manner. They were not childlike. The childlike method that Jesus speaks of here, this idea of being humble, of not being prideful. And in fact, we can argue that this whole point of this section is that we must approach Christ with an air of humility. In fact, that's going to be kind of an undercurrent throughout this entire sermon. When we look at fathers and their roles in the house, from the world's perspective, even the world is starting to recognize that something's wrong with a broken home. The world is starting to recognize that if you don't have the father present in the home, the statistics bear out that the kids are going to have something wrong with them. As much as they don't want to admit that. As much as they don't want to acknowledge that. The reality is that fathers are critical to healthy homes. They must take up that mantle of responsibility for what it is. We cannot pretend that it is not critical. And as we've seen in our churches then, what happens to churches where our fathers don't step up? They're dying. They're quiet. They don't grow. They lose their vibrancy. When we do not lead, we leave a hole. We leave a vacuum. How we lead matters, and it's something we're going to discuss. But I want you to look first at this verse 28. "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." That sounds like a wonderful promise today, doesn't it? I want you to think for a moment about the things that are weighing you down, the things that are heavy laden for you, the things that are pushing you down and hindering your walk, hindering your focus. I want you to think of anything that is pulling you away from God, anything that is distracting you, anything that is filling you up and stopping you from pursuing God with everything that you have. And I want you to picture that for a moment as a yoke. It's something that is bearing down upon us. For the fathers in particular in the room, I'm going to speak from my own experience for a moment. I want you to imagine the things that keep you up at night. I want you to imagine the things that cause you to ponder and think, the questions that haunt. Do I do enough to provide for my family? Do I do enough to participate in my church? Do I do enough to raise up my children in righteousness? Do my children live in righteousness? Do I support my spouse? Do I give her what she needs? Do I demonstrate Christ to her and to my house, and by then to the world? Surely I'm not the only one that loses sleep over these questions. Surely I'm not the only one that ponders these things. If you don't ponder these things, is it because you are at peace? Or is it because you have simply grown used to that gnawing in the back of your mind? One of them is a good thing and one is quite obviously wrong. We are all weighed down by something in this world. We all will have cares and problems in this world. That is an inevitability because we have to live in the world. It would be wonderful if we could just shut it off. If we didn't have to go to work. If we didn't have to make that commute. Those of you that are retired are going, don't worry, once you retire, you get busier. My grandparents often remarked, I kind of wish I had a day job again so that I could say no to more things. Right? They were busier in their retirement than they ever were during their working years. Yet we recognize that we all labor in something. We all have something that we are laboring against. And Jesus offers the solution. Come to me, you who are heavy laden, you who are weary, you who are tired. Come to me and what? I will give you rest. That sounds like a good promise, doesn't it? That sounds like a promise every one of us will want to take hold of. Every one of us will want to grip. Let me ask you this question, though. When I tell you that Jesus will give you rest, right, that God can give you rest, what is the thing that comes to your mind, and don't shout it out, just think about it, when you picture rest? For many people, we work so hard and we work so long and so many hours that the idea of rest is sitting on that couch and doing our thumb exercises in front of the television. For many, the idea of rest is simply being still, simply not working. That is what a majority of people picture when you speak about rest. But I ask you this, is that what we see rest as in Scripture? Is that the type of rest that he is talking about? For those of you that are coming to our Wednesday nights, I'm going to spoil a lesson that we're going to go through in a little bit. Turn with me to Hebrews chapter 4. Hebrews chapter 4, look at verses 1 and 2. I'm making you do the better thumb exercises today. 4:1 says this, therefore, while the promise of entering his rest still stands, let us fear, lest any of you should seem to have failed to reach it. For good news came to us just as it did to them. But the message they heard did not benefit them because they were not united by faith with those who listened. Now, there's a whole lot of theys going on there, and I'm not going to make us read all of chapter 2 and chapter 3 for us to understand who the they is. I'll just tell you. The they that is being referred to here are those that experienced the Exodus. It's those that went through and were rescued by God from slavery in Egypt. They went through the waters. They went through the wilderness. Okay. And what Hebrews 3 tells us is, look, they made it all the way to the banks of the Jordan. And then what? They failed. They failed. They succumbed to fear. These people who had seen mighty, marvelous wonders and miracles of God, they failed at the finish line. They get all the way to the banks of the Jordan. They send the spies in. And these are people who have seen Egypt brought down to their knees. They have seen the Red Sea parted before them. They have seen manna, their food, fall from the sky and complained about it. They have seen the Lord guide them to victories while in the wilderness. And they get to the Jordan River and they send the spies in. When the spies come back, what happens? They cry. They grieve. Why? Because the spies, 10 of them report, well, they all report that there are mighty cities here. There are mighty walled cities inhabited by giants. And 10 of the spies say, we can't do anything about this. And so all the people grieve. And as we look at that story, we can't help but be incredulous and go, how? How is that your reaction? This is God on your side. The Lord has promised that he is going to go into battle for you. And you get to the battle, and what do? You whine and complain. You bemoan what he's going to bring you through. And you say, God can't do that. My God's not big enough to take out the giants. My God's not big enough to bring these cities to heal. What did they just witness again? What had they just seen again? All the miracles they witnessed, everything God has brought them through, and yet they stumble at the last minute. And what does it say? It's their lack of faith. They were not united in faith that God could move. Now, of course, there were 2 spies that did have faith, right? Joshua and Caleb. And Joshua and Caleb said, we can go and do this. If the Lord is with us, who can stop us? Who can be against us? If God says that he is going to deliver the enemies into our hands, then what is our job? We're to go and take it. They're rewarded for their faith, and yet we see that the rest of the nation is punished. None of that generation will pass through. None of them will go over into Canaan. See, we have this promise of entering God's rest. But that rest in their day, what was that going to look like? The rest in their day was going to look like conquering Canaan. Does that sound restful to you? Does that sound, when you picture, I got a Saturday off and I'm going to go and take some time to rest. I'm going to go conquer Canaan on the side. Not my idea of a restful day, right? That's not our perception of rest. So what then is in view? The idea is this. Think of it like this. The rest is peace. The rest is peace. I can go to God and I can be at rest through whatever turmoils this world throws at me. Whatever task or trial needs to be endured, I can be at rest. My mind doesn't have to worry about it. I don't have to be in fear. I can respond in faith and say, my God is big enough. My God is enough to deal with these problems, and he has promised that it's all going to be fine. Now, by fine, do I mean that you're going to get everything you ever wanted? No. What I mean is this, that you have an inheritance that matters far more than any suffering this world can throw at you. You have a treasure that is yours to possess. Just have faith. Just hold firm. When you look at David's Psalms, there's one that in particular gets a lot of love, and that of course is Psalm 23, right? And Psalm 23 starts with what? The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. What does that mean? It's the same idea. If you look at some of the interesting paraphrases that we've seen over the years, there is this continual idea brought up of, the Lord is my shepherd, I have all that I need. I have all that I could ever need. Why? Because God is good. God is caring. God is shepherding your soul. He is the one who is looking after you. He is the one who is going to fight these battles, and he is the one that has already completed the work and established your salvation. So what are you worried about? What can possibly burden you if you are yoked to Christ? Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I will give you peace. Now that said, we still have to do what he says to do, don't we? Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. If there's a yoke, what was the purpose of the yoke? So you could do work. So here's the problem. Those that say, okay, I have put my faith in God and now I'm going to rest, and then they hit the couch and they never do anything, what have they missed? They haven't actually taken upon the yoke of Christ, have they? The idea is this: if I take on the yoke of Christ, if I go where he is going to go, then I will be at peace. It won't matter what burdens. It won't matter what comes along, because I know we can endure it because we have Christ on our side. You have to be going, as Sharon, as you said during our Sunday school, you have to be going the direction that God is going. If you resist his yoke, if you are prideful, if you are built up, if you try and rely on your own strength, what are you doing? You're kicking against him. You're resisting him. You're doing precisely what the Pharisees were doing in that day. Remember, what was the first step? Humble yourself. Do not be built up because of what God has done. My goodness, imagine that for a moment. Imagine God doing all the work in your life. Imagine God making the way before you, making everything clear, and then you get to the end and go, look what I did! My goodness, how inappropriate that would be, right? How foolish you would look in that moment. Give it all to Christ and walk with him. Bear his yoke. Now, dads, it's Dad's Day, so I get to pick on you today. And by picking on you, I get to pick on me. Okay? When we hear that fathers are supposed to lead in their homes, that fathers are supposed to lead in righteousness, there are many times that I have seen this turn into iron-fisted discipline. Unyielding discipline. And if my kids are not perfectly behaving all of the time, then that means somehow that I'm failing as a dad. And then we put our kids under the microscope and we put a yoke on them, don't we? We put a yoke on them to bear our burdens. I am burdened for my kids to be raised up in righteousness, and therefore you better be perfect. Is that fair to the kid? Is that the burden your children are supposed to bear? No. What yoke are they supposed to take up? Christ's yoke. The same yoke you and I are supposed to take up. And how did we do that? Through humility. We do that through following him. We do that through learning from him. And he points to his own character and says, this is how you do that. What is his character? He is gentle and lowly. That's the same as stern and rebuking, right? That's the same as the slave master and the taskmaster, right? No? Gentle, loving, merciful. Guys, the burden is this: we have to lead by example as we follow his example. We have to look at how Christ lived his life and imitate him in a way that our family looks and says, that's how we solve our problems. You see, there's a phrase, it's not a biblical phrase, monkey see, monkey do. Okay? My kids will look to me about how to act. Greta remarked last night, when I'm out of the house, when I'm not there for dinner, because I'm on the road for some reason or another, Judson actually does the family prayer, which I think is the coolest thing in the world. And listening to a 5-year-old pray is both hilarious and adorable at the same time. But she says, you know something? He prays exactly like you do. In other words, the form of the prayer follows exactly how I pray. Heavenly Father, it's exactly how every prayer starts. Does he fully know what it means? Probably not. But he knows that when dad prays, that's how you start the prayer. And so how is he going to start every prayer for his whole life? Just like that. They do what you do. When you are grieved, when you are heavily burdened, when you are heavily laden, where do you find your comfort? Where do you find your rest? You guys know, about a month ago now, when I lost my grandfather, that thought was going through my head like crazy. Because I knew that my kids were going to watch and see how I reacted to grief. When I am grieved, do I run to the fridge? Do we go shopping? Do we go on a family road trip? Do we run? Right? Do we build something? Or do we run to the Father and seek to find our peace there? The things you seek for comfort are what your children will seek comfort from. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing. You can, in this life, bless your children with an inheritance of loving God, or you can curse them by loving the world. They're going to follow you either way. Yes, we'll get to the teenage years. Yes, they will be defiant because they're trying to become their own person. And then they're going to move out of the house, and you know what they're going to realize? In becoming their own person, they became you. And as all of you think back, you're like, oh, crud, that is what happened, isn't it? We become just like our parents, do we not? Noah, I love you, brother. Your dad came here terrifying because it was like there were two of you. You even walk the same. You walk the same, you talk the same, you laugh the same. Everybody in this room, anybody going to deny that? No. Gordon and Noah, same person. My dad showed up. I laughed at this. God bless you all. My dad was so happy with this. And a couple of you guys said, is that your brother? My father was laughing so much at that. He appreciated that compliment more than you know. But no, you carry yourself the same way, don't you? You walk the same. You talk the same. You laugh the same. You grieve the same. What example have we set for our children? Do we seek the comforts of the world, or do we find our rest in God? That is a question we must continually ask ourselves. I think I'm actually going to leave it there today. I'm going to leave it there for you to chew on. But I want you to remember this. Oh, no, I'm sorry. One last thing. I knew I had one more thing that if I forgot. It's something I brought up in Sunday school, and that's why I thought, did I already say that yet? I know some of you guys are past the age of rearing children. I'm not ignorant of that fact. I know that this sermon is going to ring one way for guys like Matt and myself and Noah and Mike. I get that, and it's going to ring differently for those of you that are in retirement age. Okay? But I need you to understand something. This does not only apply to your physical children. This does not only apply to your physical grandchildren or great-grandchildren. This applies to your spiritual children. If you walk the path of discipleship, there will come a moment where you have to reproduce. There will come a moment, and it's an often neglected part of discipleship, where you have to go out and disciple another, where you reproduce for the faith in that way. Paul instructs his followers to what? Be imitators of who? Of Paul. As Paul imitates who? Christ. That's a terrifying thought, isn't it? That's a terrifying thought, that you as a Christian are going to put yourself voluntarily in a position to say, look at my life and imitate what I do as I try to imitate Christ. And yet that is a calling for each and every one of us. And so just because you may not have small children in the house anymore, or small grandchildren or small greats in the house anymore. Does not mean that you are exempt from the parenting lessons in the sermon. They apply to you as you raise spiritual children just as much as those of us that are raising physical children.